So, welcome everyone back after lunch. And I have now the pleasure to introduce you to Claire Reckless. And after being 15 years a tester, Claire is now for almost 1 year an engineering manager at Money Supermarket. She supports a number of teams to deliver great products, but also to help them to develop their careers, which is a very important aspect. And what she really loves about her job is to work with great people and teams. Although she's now in the industry for nearly 20 years and has spoken at several international conferences, Claire still sometimes feel like an imposter. And I think this is something very familiar to some of us as well. And today, she will share some personal insights, what it meant for her moving into this management role. And we will hear about her fears, her biggest lessons learned, her highlights, and of course, some tips for you if this opportunity comes along. And should I take it or not? This is the good question. But don't forget, rate sessions, leave comments, and ask Q&A questions to win one of the free ebooks sponsored by our knowledge partner, Pact and Manning. And Claire, now it's your turn. The stage is yours.
Hi there. Thank you very much, Sabine. I'm hoping everyone can hear me okay. So yeah, welcome to my talk. I hope you're all enjoying the conference so far. Just let me get my notes on the screen. Yeah, I hope you're all enjoying the conference so far. Looks like there've been some really great talks on, so thank you for coming to this one. Really good to have you here. Just a couple of things in advance. I've woken up with a little bit of a cough and a sore throat this morning, so huge apologies if I start to sound a bit funny or if I need to take a drink. I've got some water here. Also, I'm in my husband's office today in our house, and I've realised that he doesn't have a lampshade. So apologies for the sort of glow that's coming from above my head. If that's annoying you a bit, sorry about that. I didn't realise until I kind of dialed onto the presentation that that's what it looked like. But hopefully it won't cause too many problems. Just to introduce myself properly, my name is Claire Reckless. I am an engineering manager at a company called Money Supermarket, and they are a UK-based price comparison site for financial products, insurance, savings, that kind of thing. And I live and work in Manchester in the UK. I work across a couple of different teams, as has been said. So our mobile apps team, developing our native iOS and Android app, and our credit monitoring and reporting team. So I look after those teams, support them, and some of the engineers in those teams as well. Prior to that, I was a tester for 15 years across a variety of sectors, so financial software, security software, things like that. And prior to that, I worked in tech support for 5 years across a few different companies. So I've done a few different things in my time in tech, and it's been great to have those kind of different perspectives. Whatever my job role, I think at the moment, I still feel like a tester at heart. It's what I did for a long time. Obviously, I'm an engineering manager now, but definitely still feel like I have a sort of a tester bias in a way. Outside work, I'm a keen runner. Note the use of the word keen, not fast. And I've also spoken in the past, as Sabine said again, about my experiences with imposter syndrome, and I will touch on that a little bit later. I'm here today to talk about my experiences moving into an engineering management role and management in general. Some of the things that may have held me back, and some of the lessons I've learned along the way moving into that role, and how I've dealt with some of the challenges, like how to manage and lead a team of people when they know a lot more than you do and you've never done their job before. Not so long ago, it felt like the perceived path for testers, it felt quite linear. So it might look like tester, senior tester, test lead or principal, maybe test manager, head of test, some kind of variation on that. And these days it feels like it's not quite so obvious. We have testers perhaps embedded in agile teams. A lot of companies don't even have a head of test or anything like that. The company I work for doesn't have a test manager or a head of test. And so it may not be as clear how to progress. If maybe you want to take a technical leadership path, or maybe you want to explore the world of management, and maybe you want to do a bit of both, which can be a bit less clear cut. But if you're interested in whether the world of engineering management might suit you, hopefully this talk will be helpful to you. So just to talk a little bit about how I kind of got into management in the first place and some of my problems around this. I was always quite reluctant to explore, get into any kind of management earlier in my career. It was something I actively avoided. I'd be asked about it in one-to-ones and was absolutely certain that it was in no way the path for me. I wanted to pursue a technical path, and I wasn't up for managing people or looking after people or anything like that. There were other reasons behind this, though. I had issues with confidence and a massive fear of failure. I was very risk averse. I felt I wasn't suited to managing people. I'm quite introverted and quite quiet, really. And I just felt that I wouldn't be suited to it. I didn't feel like I knew enough or had enough experience to be able to do that kind of job. I had a real fear of conflict. I still have a bit of a fear of conflict, to be fair, but a real fear of conflict. My experiences in the earlier days of my career was seeing managers be dragged into rooms and screamed at by their bosses because something had gone wrong in production, and it was, not a great environment, but there was absolutely no way that I was going to put myself in that position. My other experiences were around, when times were tough at a company, that sort of middle management layer being the ones that were sort of cleared out and be sort of becoming disposable. If I didn't have those hands-on skills anymore, would that, was I more at risk of perhaps losing my job? And I'd also had some experiences with not great managers myself. I enjoyed being the person that made things, being hands-on with the code or the products, exploring it, getting involved with preventing problems, with finding those really tricky, complicated bugs, and really getting stuck in and being the person who was really involved in delivering things. And yeah, I think so. A lot of the time it was just that I wasn't at the right company, I wasn't the right person, and the right role wasn't there for me. Moving into a management role it's not necessarily the sort of just a linear next step in a career. It can be a completely different role, where you may or may not use some of the kind of domain knowledge that you've previously built. But starting to think about how I started to move into line management a few years ago, and this is talking about 14 years or so into my career, I had the opportunity to do some unofficial line management. Initially, I was persuaded to manage a couple of placement students at the company I was at. So these were students at the local university doing their degree, and as part of that degree, they had a placement year, and they would spend that placement year at our company working within our teams. I think I was asked to do it mainly to avoid increasing the workload for some of the existing line managers. And these couple of students came in as tester placements, and it was only once they were in the company that I established that neither of them were particularly interested in testing. One wanted to be a security tester, so a penetration tester, ethical hacker type role, and the other one was very interested in data science. So knowing that they possibly weren't that interested in being testers, I focused on just giving them as much experience as I could during their time with us, ensuring they got to try working on different teams, finding opportunities for them to perhaps do some security testing or work on a data team with databases, and just get a little bit of experience aligned with what their interests were. Getting used to giving them feedback, gathering feedback about how they were doing from the team they were working in, and helping coach them in how testing worked, because ultimately they were there to do a testing role, but helping kind of share some of those testing skills that I'd kind of gathered over the years. So at this point, I'd had a little kind of go at line management, had a taste of it, didn't totally hate it, actually quite enjoyed it, although recognizing there's a whole different world of difference between managing 2 placement students and a whole team of people. But I think just being able to try it out, start small, just made a massive difference. I think it made me think about giving this a go as an actual role, because it was something I'd enjoyed and hadn't really expected to. And I think if you're looking for, if you're thinking about, would I enjoy management, look for opportunities to do that, to take that bit of extra responsibility. It's something we're looking at my current company. So we're thinking about, succession planning for future engineering managers. Can we give people with those kind of aspirations a taste of that? Can we give them somebody to line manage, support them in kind of building up their skills, and see how they get on and how they feel about it, and provide them with guidance. I think if I'd gone straight from being a senior tester straight into a team manager or a test manager, I would have, knowing myself, I think I would have struggled. I needed to build up my confidence more, realize that I could do it. And I think that's okay. We see some people sort of flying up the management ladder, and, well done to them. But it's also okay to be a bit unsure and need to take those small steps to get into something. And it felt like, when I reflected on it, it felt like, it's like a secondment in a way, or the sort of human version of testing in production. So, try something yourself as a small test, get feedback, see how you feel, and then take your next steps from there. My daughter, who is 3, was watching me kind of practice these slides last night, and she came up to me and said, oh, there's a little boy at soft play on the slides. And it made me kind of realize how there's possibly a bit of analogy between management and being at soft play, in that it's quite chaotic and there will probably be tears at some point. So moving forward a bit, I had just come back from maternity leave in early 2020 to my test lead role, as I was then, a few weeks before the pandemic hit, which means I went from being at home with a baby to being at home with a baby and my husband in a very small house, kind of trying to work at the same time. And like many people, when sort of significant events happen, it really makes you question what's important to you. And I started thinking about what I wanted from my job. What were the things I really enjoyed? I'd always stuck to this message about wanting to pursue a technical path, but I really started to reconsider that. I really was enjoying working with the team. I'd taken these sort of small steps from that initial taste of line management to managing a slightly larger number of people on one team, to then managing a slightly larger number of people over a couple of teams. And I found it was, I was really enjoying it after so long of kind of resisting it, and started to think that actually is this the path I would like to pursue? And so I started considering different roles. Do I look for a test manager role elsewhere? Because my company, like I said, didn't have that role. But in 2021, so early 2021, my company, Money Supermarket, announced that they were looking to change the structure within engineering and bring in a new role of engineering manager, which was completely new to the business. So just talk a little bit about why that was. The reason for this introducing the engineering manager role was that the management of our engineers would previously come under tech leads and test leads, of which I was one. And people in those roles were spread very, very thinly amongst trying to kind of drive the technical direction and tooling and things like that, as well as the line management. So we really wanted to be able to enable those tech leads and test leads to really focus on their, become those real technical specialists and be able to focus on the tech and take away that line management responsibility. They would still have to take an element of participation in coaching and mentoring and kind of helping upskill the team, but they wouldn't have the line management as well. We also found that there was an indefinite, inconsistent level of support across the department in terms of, different people's experiences. So, for example, some engineers wouldn't have had a one-to-one for months and never had career conversations with their managers and had no objectives set and no real path, and were just sort of aimlessly kind of just drifting through getting the work done, but didn't have any real kind of focus on their own development. Whereas some people had a tech lead who had, spent loads of time with them, supporting them, providing objectives, doing lots of coaching. And so there was a massive disparity across our department in the experiences that people got. And we really wanted to be able to sort that problem out and provide that consistent level of support. Another issue that we had was around a lot of our teams were quite separate, and they'd been set when our tech hub was set up initially. They were set up to a lot of the teams were able to just do things the way they wanted to, and as a result, a lot of the teams had done things in completely different ways. So what that actually meant was the experience our customers got, depending on which part of the website they went to, would be completely different. If they went to buy car insurance, for example, they would go through a customer journey that was completely different, that looked completely different, the experience was different to if they were buying home insurance. And for example, we were using multiple different address lookups for all of these different channels. And so if it came to needing to move people around based on business need, business priority, or helping people to develop so they weren't just stuck in the same team for years and years, which some people had been, it was really, really hard to do that because there was no consistency across the department. So EM's another problem that we wanted to be able to solve was to help kind of break down some of those silos, introduce sort of consistent ways of doing things across the team, still allowing level, obviously a certain amount of autonomy, but enabling us to break down some of those silos. So just to be clear, thinking about the engineering management role, I initially considered myself still to be woefully underqualified and inexperienced for this role, but it did sound really interesting. But it wouldn't just be a next step up, it would be a complete change, taking me out of my testing comfort zone, and it would be a whole new world of new things. And it did present some challenges. The individuals that I'd be managing wouldn't be solely testers. I'd been managing kind of 2 or 3 or 4 testers up to now. They were developers. They would be developers of all levels, so tech lead to junior developers and test leads, different levels of testers as well. And it's one thing managing people where you have done the job that they do, but I had never been a developer, and I had certainly never been a tech lead. So I definitely had a bit of a fear about, would people have confidence that I could support them in in their careers, in being able to support the team. I'd also potentially be in a position where I'd be going from being part of one of these teams, being a tester in the team, to being an engineering manager looking after the team, and that felt quite nerve-wracking as well. Would people feel that I could do a good job in supporting them? So to try and sort of resolve this for myself, I needed to look at what the remit of the engineering manager role was. And it's worth saying that as an engineering manager, different companies will have different interpretations of what the purpose of the engineering manager role is. I suppose in the same way as you would with lots of roles. But at Money Supermarket, the aim was to support engineers to develop their careers and make sure they could, progress in the direction that they wanted to, whether it was up that levels of seniority to senior developer to tech lead, or if they, if they wanted to say move into platform engineering, or testers wanted to move into development, and trying to kind of give them those opportunities. We'd be responsible for building teams, building high performing teams, enabling the teams to deliver well, using good practices, good ways of working for them, perhaps bits of agile coaching, like I said, enabling us to deliver at pace, which is one of our kind of key principles at Money Supermarket, being able to deliver at pace. Working with teams on what good looks like. So do they know what good looks like in terms of their system? What does good look like for their system at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday in terms of, what the traffic looks like, what kind of errors they're getting, if they got that kind of alerting and monitoring in place, to tell them these things. Do they know when there is a problem? And also things like other things that were outside of the team, like recruitment, making sure we're getting the best people in to work within our teams, and kind of really build up our engineering team, and also community. So I've obviously kind of got a great interest in community. The testing community has been something I've been involved with for a few years now, but it was about kind of bringing back the community into Money Supermarket. I know that during the pandemic, a lot of businesses that might have previously had great internal communities, it may have fallen by the wayside a bit. Ours certainly did. We had some very active guilds, and a lot of that stopped during the pandemic when people were working from home. And we wanted to try and build that back up and, bring some of the external community into the business, and as well as us getting out there and interacting and supporting the tech community as well. So this was just some of the remit. There's obviously, an awful lot of other things that we would be having to do as well. So how to navigate this challenge, how can I do the best job that I can to support these new people, and what are the main lessons I've learned from moving into this role? So one of the first things that I think has been, and one of the biggest things that's been a massive help, is around identifying your support network. Whether you're moving into a new role, that might be the next step in a ladder, a sideways move, whatever you're doing, make sure you can quickly identify that support network. One of the people that was one of the biggest supports for me was my manager. I had a great manager. He was extremely supportive and encouraging about me going for the EM role. I expressed my concerns. Would I be at a disadvantage having not worked in a developer role? Would the people supporting me, people I'd be supporting, be at a disadvantage because I hadn't done that role? Would I be able to carry out the responsibilities on me? And he really believed I could do it. He had real confidence in me, and having a great manager who really believes that you can do the job can make all the difference. And maybe it might not be your manager, it might be a mentor or other role model, but having that person in the, feeling that they're kind of on your side and supporting you, even though they know that you might make mistakes and fail sometimes, then that it's invaluable, really. The EM collective, as we call us, there were 4 of us who moved into engineering manager roles at the same time, because, like I said, it was a role from scratch and we had to recruit multiple engineering managers. One of us was from a front-end dev background, one from a back-end dev background, one who moved sideways from another management role, and myself from a test background. So we've got the benefit of having that real kind of diversity of technical backgrounds. And since then, we've had another person join us who also has an awesome amount of agile coaching and delivery experience. So 3 of us were new to the role entirely, bringing experiences from slightly different areas, but we were all learning at the same time. And they might have been developers previously, but they had never been engineering managers either. We had to decide on our ways of working, how we as EMs would interact with the teams and individuals to provide that level of consistency. We had to get to understand a whole array of processes, procedures, as well as coming up with our own, who would line manage who would, how would we handle promotions and progression? How do we ensure our teams are in the right shape to deliver? But the important thing was, again, we're all doing it together. We're learning together. It's not that we make all our decisions by committee. That would never work, but it provides us with a group to bounce ideas off. And I think this is one of the biggest things that has helped me in my time in this role. These 4 people, we each have our strengths and our weaknesses, and knowing I wasn't on my own in learning how to do this job, we challenge each other, we hold each other accountable. And even the person who has years and years of experience comes to the rest of us and says, I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think? This is my view. What do you think? And knowing that, we can provide that support no matter who is asking is, it's have been a massive benefit. The next one I would talk about is the external community. So your support network shouldn't be only internal. There are people who can support you externally as well. I'm very, very fortunate in that my husband is also an engineering manager. He works in a similar role for another company. And so I can talk to him, but I also reached out to someone else from the test community who had also moved into an engineering manager role a few months before I did. And we started catching up regularly. We still catch up regularly a year later. I had a conversation with him earlier this week, and just sharing those experiences, chatting, getting an external view on things is really, really valuable. And finally, kind of other functions within the business. So when I was a tester, I was quite kind of, I was within the teams I was in, and I didn't have much of a broad reach outside of those teams. But as an EM, you kind of get to know teams like your people team, and I think the people team or HR team or human resources, whatever you would call them, they've been an invaluable source of support and knowledge, from processes to prompting us to promote and review pay, which is novel these days. They're helping us with all the admin and team management. They sit in on our meetings and let us know what they need from us and what they can do for us as well. And as a new engineering manager, for all of us, they've been an essential function, as well as teams like finance, perhaps, who hold the budgets for promotions and reviews and contractors and things like that. It's about building relationships with those people who can really support you in the role. So one of the next lessons that's been quite a tough one for me is this not trying to do everything. When I was test lead, I was very much hands-on testing, in the weeds with releases and getting stuff out there. Excuse me. And this changed when I became an EM, and it was made more difficult by the fact I was an EM for the team I had previously worked in. So there's always that temptation to go, oh, I'll just test this. Oh, I can just help with this and help get that out. The way we structured our line management as well, I'm also looking after people who work on teams that I am not an engineering manager for. So there's a lot of different contexts and cognitive load, and it's a lot to take on. I've had to make sure I'm working on the most important things. Am I regularly checking in with the people I look after? Am I spending enough time with the team as a whole, helping them solve any delivery problems? Am I spending time with product, understanding the vision and roadmap? And kind of being a cheerleader for that and cheerleader for the team. It's really, really easy to get overwhelmed in sort of meeting hell as an EM, and you can end up playing this horrible, massive game of Tetris with your calendar where everyone wants your time, and your teams, your individuals, other teams, people with problems, and you can end up in back-to-back meetings all day with no time to do any of the work that the meetings are about. And I admit I have got quite overwhelmed at times, and as a seasoned people pleaser, I've had to learn to say, no, I am not available for that meeting. I cannot do this, and take the time to sit and think about things and not feel bad about it. I'm someone who I sometimes struggle to come up with an answer in the moment. If I'm in a meeting, I'm quite a reflective person. I need that time to mull something over. So, and if I don't get that time, I'm not really contributing anything. So, and to be able to do my job effectively, I need to make that time for myself. Otherwise, I'm never getting to absorb or kind of do anything I need to do. So I've had to think about what can be delegated to tech leads or to others in the teams. Part of the EM job is to build that culture of trust, to ensure the engineers have the autonomy they need, and pushing them to take ownership of things themselves. I've not got time to sit and be totally hands-on, but maybe I can sit in a mobbing session for an hour and see how the team are getting on, how they're interacting, have a look, have a high-level view of the code that's being written, might participate in story kickoffs and think discussions around that, and kind of help coach the team in how they can improve. You don't need to know all the answers. I think having got the EM role and the support of the network, I was looking after 2 teams and a bunch of testers, devs, tech leads, etc. But what about that concern about not knowing enough? How do I manage and support a bunch of people when I have never done their job? There's a perception of managers by some that I think management should be the expert, be the person who can teach the team. And I do know some managers like that. Their approach is to sit down with people and teach them technical skills. And unless you're kind of spending time keeping your own technical skills up to date, then that might not really be sustainable, because eventually your skills are going to kind of date out. But the EM role isn't about knowing everything or teaching developers how to be better developers or telling people what to do. I need to know enough that I'm able to participate in the technical discussions. But as a tester, that's knowledge that I've built up from being a tester. I can understand system architectures and how our apps work. I've written lots of code, not great code, but I've written some code. So, it's not something that's alien to me. I'm used to having to pick up technical concepts quickly as a tester, and these are where these skills that we build up as testers can really, really start to come in useful. If you've participated in mobbing or pairing sessions as testers, you'll be used to picking up on, things like code smells. Are we duplicating code? Is that class absolutely massive? It's, there are things that we're used to looking for. And as an EM, if you're involved in helping the team get better, these are also things that you can look for. I also do a lot of enabling work, so unblocking obstacles, who to speak to about something that you're having a problem with, connecting people with each other, trying to spot where the team might be struggling. The EMs work well together as a group as well. We'll go and work with each other's teams to help with things like agile coaching, facilitating sessions, and having that fresh pair of eyes can make a real difference. And I support engineers in different ways, not just on a technical front, but about their ideas, opportunities, what concerns they have. Conversations are often not even about their technical skills. Most one-to-ones I do with people, then not even talking about anything technical, but how can they improve their soft skills, behaviors? How can they, what's the next opportunity? How do they get to that next level? Talking to people and seeking to understand their role, about how they feel about their teams, about their careers, and, what they think could be better, and about their problems. And asking the questions. And this is why, another reason why testers can make really awesome engineering managers, is that we are used to not knowing the answers, and they're really, really good at asking questions. Difficult questions as well sometimes. So if someone can't explain a technical problem to me, if I've asked them kind of to talk me through it, then do they understand it? And is that a problem that we need to look at? Is something too complex, or does the team understand it properly? Do we need to break it down as a team and understand where we're going? And I can ask lots of questions. I'm really curious. Why are we doing it that way? What does that mean? Listen to your team and seek to kind of understand that. I don't often tell the team that they need to be doing something. Their team needs to be empowered to do things the way they think is right. But I might ask questions along the way. Do we need to do a release? How can we tell if something is successful? Have we thought about this? Again, the kinds of things you would ask as a tester. I'm there to help facilitate their learning and development through conversations, check-ins, helping them find their own solutions. Again, that might be pairing, or might be a course or a conference or a workshop, but helping out them identify by sort of taking that coaching approach, asking questions, not just giving them the answers. What is it they want from their career? What do they value? What do they enjoy? How do they learn best? Getting to know them and what's important to them. So the next bit is around feedback. So when our EM collective got going, as part of our taking on our new direct reports, we needed to be very clear about what our role was. It was to try and work out how we can support the team and the people in it, and by getting and giving very clear and honest feedback, and getting comfortable with being very uncomfortable sometimes, as it often is when we have to give feedback, especially if it's kind of, more on the constructive side. This means understanding the facts, trying to take the emotion out of the situation, and being clear about what you're saying and what you want to happen. We work very closely with our tech leads to get feedback about developers. We work closely with our developers to get feedback about our tech leads, but we'll also encourage people to give each other feedback directly. We think that's more effective, kind of building a culture of people feeling safe to talk to one another. It isn't always the case, but it works, often works well when it does, rather than feedback coming via their manager. I look after a couple of teams at the company. I also line manage some individuals on those teams. I line manage individuals on different teams. So feedback is an essential tool in understanding how people are getting on, if they're having performance issues, or if they've done something really awesome, or if there are things they can improve on. So I think it's, that's been another kind of a big lesson, a big learning curve for me. So starting to think about, kind of summarising, think about what testers can bring to the engineering manager role if it's an opportunity that might present itself to you. The breadth of technical knowledge of the system. We as testers, we know how the system works. We we'll know how the architecture is put together. We'll know how data flows through it. We'll know how it interacts with other systems, and having that kind of general even though we might be a specialist in certain area, having that technical knowledge, that breadth of technical knowledge, bringing that to the EM role is a massive benefit. You can get involved in those technical discussions, and that's so valuable. Sorry, my throat's starting to be a bit croaky. The critical thinking and questioning skills, again, something that we do as testers. We're asking why things are done that way. Why does it work this way? What about this scenario? What happens if the customer does this? And it's those, you know, those skills that are really, really valuable to the EM role. We have to kind of, you know, have to challenge decisions. We have, you know, we're still involved in those discussions about the product and have to think about different scenarios, and having that kind of foundation of critical thinking skills has been a great benefit. Relationship building. So obviously as testers, we kind of will have, you know, interactions with various people and may have to sort of, you know, speak about things in a certain way. Perhaps sometimes you're delivering sort of negative, you know, not so great news, and you know, we get used to interacting with different people and building up those relationships. And so I think as testers we can be very well placed to be in that role. Taking a coaching approach, if you've been a quality coach or an agile coach or you know, something like that, then again the EM role that we take, that's very much the approach that we take to things. It's not directional telling people what to do, it's helping the team and people find their own path, and knowing what good looks like as well. I think you know, as testers we all know the sort of different principles, and you know what good looks like in terms of quality and testing and the team and how the team functions as a whole. And I think that that's been, you know, that's something we've worked really closely with on our teams. It's something that's a work in progress, we're still working on it. But yeah, for me, these things are some of the most valuable skills that testers have that we can bring to that engineering management role. So I'm just over a year on from becoming an engineering manager. I've spoken in the past about my feelings of imposter syndrome, but I think what confused me when I thought about it was that even though this was the most challenging role I'd worked in, and it is really hard, it's had the steepest learning curve, I didn't feel those imposter feelings as I had before. And I don't mean that in an arrogant, I've got it all figured out kind of way, because that's not the case at all. There's a lot I don't know. Sometimes I'm still winging it, but I know that others are also learning at the same time as me. And even people with lots of experience still don't know everything and still rely on others for support and to help us through. And we're all getting it wrong sometimes and making mistakes. And so having, you know, that supportive group of people, just, I think that's been one of the biggest things in kind of really making me not feel those imposter feelings, and I'm not feeling like a fraud. And it was only when I'd sat and reflected after a year or so in role, I thought that's really strange, because I'd always felt like that in the past and I haven't. I've still got a long way to go, and it's not the path I thought I'd take. But I think if you're a tester, test lead, test manager, looking for your next move, I'd certainly recommend it as a role to look at. You'll probably bring more than you think you will to it. And that's it. So I just thought I'd give you all a laugh at the end. This is me and 3 of my fellow engineering managers all doing our best 90s boy band pose in some lovely Money Supermarket merchandise. But yes, thank you very much for listening to me talk, and I can hand back to for any questions.
Thank you very much, Claire, for this presentation. And I really enjoyed your quote, I have to learn to say no to special meetings because I need some time for deep work. And I think this is so important also for the team to see that we can say no if things are not working properly. So thank you very much. We have a lot of questions. I think we will not make it through all of them. The first one is, what skills should tester focus on if he or she wants to level up? And what programming language do you think would help to learn? And the second question is just very close to this. Do you think it's helpful to know any programming language in the management role?
So just taking the first part of that question, so what skills should testers focus on if they want to level up? So I would say as a start, making sure that you kind of understand what good looks like as for an engineering team, and what those really good development practices look like. That's a big part of our role, is working with the team to kind of help them make sure that they're using those good practices, solving problems. If, you know, a lot of the problems that we have with our teams are they end up doing too much at once, but they struggle to really see that they're doing that because they're so in the weeds. And being able to sort of take that high level view and see what good looks like, what does good look like, and where might the teams not quite be doing that. So in terms of programming languages, that's a really hard one. I mean, our stack is back end is Java, and we use Vue.js as a front end. So, but I think the thing is, I've written various programming languages in my time, all quite badly. But I think if you have those kind of development concepts, if you can understand basic development concepts, like object oriented, or the way programming languages work, then it doesn't necessarily matter whether you've done C# or you've done Java or or something else. You can you can kind of pick up, if you can pick up one language, you can probably pick up another one more easily once you've done one. So it's very difficult for me to be quite specific about that one, because there's so many. It depends what business you're in and what sector and what you're doing. Do I think it's helpful to know any programming language in a management role? Yes, I do. I don't think you have to be an absolute expert or have been a developer. I think, like I say, knowing those kind of development concepts, having written some code yourself, whether that's even test automation code is code, and it's software. And if you've written any kind of test automation, then you could absolutely, you can bring that to this role. You obviously will understand those programming concepts.
Do you recommend any online communities for join engineering management?
I think this is a difficult one. I found it quite difficult to sort of find an online community for it. In the same way that we have all these different fantastic test communities out there. I think in terms of like resources where you can find out some good stuff, I know the Lead Dev website has some fantastic content on engineering management. There's some really good articles on there, and I think they do a conference as well. So perhaps kind of starting to explore that kind of community. I know some of me and some of my fellow engineering managers are really keen to go to Lead Dev if they do it in London again next year, because they put out so many great things. So perhaps start there as a way to explore. But yeah, I've not found anything at the same level, the same kind of thing that the test community has. But the test community seems to be quite kind of unique in that respect. I don't know. It's a great place to be.
Okay, so the next thing which is voted very high is, what techniques do you use to get over the fear, as it is quite scary to step up and agree with leading positions? And as you mentioned, you were still kind of hands off everything.
Mm-hmm.
Any suggestions of how to stop having the need to be on top of everything?
Yeah. In terms of getting over the fear, that's a really good question. And yes, it is quite scary to step up and sort of start leading. I think having that kind of knowing that you have the support from your management and support from colleagues was a big thing in reassuring me that I could start to do that job. And then as you start to do it and you start to take those small steps and get into it, you kind of find your pace a bit and you find your feet, and you don't need that kind of reassurance quite so much. So I think having having those people there that can help sort of reassure you. And it's also realizing that it is a new role and you don't know everything, and you can only you're starting on that learning path, and you shouldn't expect to just be able to walk in and do everything on day one as well. And it's trying to kind of take a minute to reassure yourself of that as well. In terms of the part of the question, and you mentioned you're still kind of hands off everything, any suggestions for how to stop having the need to be on top of everything? I think the way it happened for me is my calendar had so many other things in it that I had no choice but to take a step back. Is that I found that the number of things, the EM workload as it was, I couldn't be hands on with testing or kind of being really in there in the weeds with delivery. It kind of forced me to take a step back because I had other priorities that I needed to concentrate on. And it's all about prioritization. What is the most important thing for you to be doing for your team, for your individuals? As an EM, it's not being in there being kind of, you know, trying to be really hands-on. It's trying to work with the team and with supporting the people. That is the most important part of your job.
Yeah, and there's the next question, which is a perfect match to that. How do you bypass the urge to do everything yourself instead of guiding the team to do them? So if the urge is still present, so it's the how to.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it's kind of bypassing that urge is, again, I'm sort of repeating myself really, but it was again forced upon me to, like, even if I'd had the urge to do it, I didn't have the time to do it. So it wasn't, and it wouldn't have gone down particularly well with my manager and my fellow engineering managers if I said, oh, sorry, I can't do all these things that I really need to do because I'm busy doing testing or I'm trying to get this thing out the door. So yeah, it was kind of, it sort of happened by default really, as opposed to being a deliberate thing. But I think that was probably a good thing, that it just, yeah, forced me down that road.
And then you do just give it to the team and say, hey, this is your task, or what did you do about that?
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. You kind of you say to the team, okay, you know, if we've got to get something out the door, it's kind of right. Oh well, okay, right. How are we going to do this? And you know, what's the plan? Are we, you know, to solve this problem, and get them to tell you.
But I think a high level of trust is necessary for this on both sides, right?
Definitely, absolutely, yeah. They need to trust that you are going to support them and have their best interests and help them get through it. But you also really need to be able to trust the team, and having, you know, making sure, this is part of recruiting great people, having great tech leads in the team who, you know, they will drive that they can drive that technical direction, and working really closely with them to make sure you're kind of, you know, enough to know what's happening. It's, yeah, you have to kind of relinquish a bit of that control.
Okay, thank you very much, Claire. We are running out of time. Thank you, folks out there, for all your questions. And the next session, which will happen now, is the panel discussion, Quality Engineering and Evolution of Software Quality as Team Responsibility. So see you there. And thank you again, Claire, for this wonderful talk. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Have a great day, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the conference.